G'day and welcome to the Andrew Price Podcast, the podcast for serious artists who want to learn habits, techniques, learning curriculums, all that stuff that doesn't fit into a tutorial but is very important. This is now on a new YouTube channel you might have seen. I spoke to my YouTube partner and they said that if you've got content that is different for two different audiences, as in like it might not be suitable for this audience, but this audience will like it, you should put it on two channels. I'm like, all right, the podcast, it is a little different to my tutorials, so I'm going to separate it now. So it's all on here. The Andrew Price Podcast is its own channel. And I've also got a new light. I go on professional. People were telling me that the lighting was too hard. The shadows on my cheeks were too harsh. I'm like, all right, I'll get a proper light. So I got one of those aperture things, which, by the way, I did not realize how bright professional lights are. I went from having like, an LED panel thing that you can just buy for $70 or something to like this proper thing, and turned it on and it just filled the room with light. It seemed hot, like brighter than the sun, which is obviously can't be possible, but like, I mean, you could seriously damage someone's eyes if you just turned it on and just lit them up. There's just no question. That would seriously hurt. So I think I've got it on like 60% now. The last podcast I did at 2% because I learned that if you put this giant softbox over it as well, that it needs a lot more light because it's going off of a bigger thing. But anyways, so it's like the box is half the size of the room, and anyway. It's something I learned actually, like doing that interview series in LA a few years ago. Was like, you meet the artist and you shake, they arrive at the shooting location. Hey, how's it going? Come on in. Yeah, great. This is just gonna be easy. It's casual chat. Sit down. We'll have a thing. They sit in the chair with the lights on, and oh my god, it's like deer in headlights. You're like, and it's really like, you think like, yeah, like how does it's just a light. Like just ignore the light. But it's really unnatural. It feels like you should just be going like this and just going like, all right, let's talk, covering your eyes. But you can't. So you just have to sit there with like this light just like making you squint, and you just have to pretend it's not there. And then I'm actually just sitting across from somebody and we're just going to talk, but the lighting is just ridiculous. It's painful. So I don't know how they do it on movie sets, especially years ago. Like, what did they do before cameras could actually capture dynamic range? Like the lighting must have been ridiculously bright, or is it brighter now? I don't know. Lighting technology seems to have just gotten ridiculous. I don't know. I'm rambling. Yeah, by the way, everyone who happens to any people who have been just commenting nonstop on Twitter and YouTube, where's the donut NFT? When's it coming? It's coming, all right. It's just taken so long to produce. Oh, the challenges. This thing better pay off. I mean, this NFT project. By the way, if you missed the thing, basically, the start of the year, I said, I'm going to make an NFT of your donuts. You send me your donuts, I'll render them, I'll put it into a mosaic of a big donut, and then we'll sell that, and then we'll give all the money to Blender, raise money for Blender. Didn't realize, just for starters, like how few people would follow the instructions of how to prepare the donut. And then we had to write, well, I didn't write it. Google engineer volunteered his time for the project, Patrick Crawford. Shout out to him. Wrote this add-on which will actually read the blend file, be able to detect what is the donut based on parenting and whether it's got sprinkles or other things, what other objects are not part of the scene, remove them, center it, put it on the frame with the same lighting template, and then render it. So we then rendered the entire thing, and it did work. We got through like most of them. I think like 98% automated, but then I think 10% also needed fixes after. So that was not me. That was also, I recruited Bill, who works for me, Bill Barber. I'm like, hey, Bill, what are you doing this week? Oh, I'm pretty excited. I'm working on this thing for the team. Hold that thought. How would you like to fix 1,000 donuts, one after the other, until you've forgotten why life is worth living. How would you like to do that? Yeah, so he had the in MV. I mean, I did some. Hey, come on, give me some credit. I did like 100, but after that, I'm like, all right, this is not the best use of my time. I'm going to get somebody else. I got to run a company, all right? I got to run Polygon. Speaking of which, this episode is made possible thanks to my company, Polygon, the library of assets to help you make better renders and design better spaces faster. We're changing our tagline eventually to just be design better spaces because we are going architecture all the way. We want to just go all in on that. And really the whole point of having like a huge asset library that you want to subscribe to is so you can test out ideas. Like it's like a exploration phase. Throw in furniture, this material, that material, and you got to rapidly, and you need lots of volume and variety, and that is different than just make better renders faster. So design better spaces faster is going to be the tagline in the coming year and a bit as we sort of transition fully. We're committing to it. We were just sort of like, I'll dabble, put my toe in it. We're kind of doing architecture, but we're also, we're going fully. We're going ArchViz. So if you're an ArchViz professional, get ready for lots of materials and lots of assets related to architecture. It's pretty exciting, actually. If you've run a company before, you'll know that you can never move as fast as you want to move because there are problems with your business, the website, the team, things that people can't log in and they can't get the asset fast enough, and they're like, how do you fix the download? And it just feels like you're constantly pushing against it. And then you find the right person, you hire the right person, and it's like, oh, everything works. So we hired a product manager late last year, and they've spent like the year just like improving the site process, individually going through each feature of the site, fixing SEO, fixing the speed. Like the site loads like 10 times faster than it did at the start of the year. Downloads will start 10 times faster. The everything has just been optimized. There's dark mode. We've got everything, and like we're able to like rapidly produce. Anyways, this is a thinly veiled advert. I'm sure that's what it sounds like, but anyway, it's great when you finally get that person that can just like make stuff happen. It's like, damn, this is how it should be. All right, well, that was a ramble. Let's get into it. We are going to be answering your questions. So if you have a question, blenderguru.com/podcast question. That is where you can send in your video. So it has to be a video. All you do is you get your smartphone, you go selfie mode, vertical, and you go, hey, Andrew, my name is such and such. I'm from Estonia, wherever, and this is my question. Then you just ask your question within 30 to 60 seconds, and then I'll pick the most interesting ones. Don't feel bad if you don't get picked on the podcast. It could be that I'm storing your question in a folder and I'm going to answer it soon. You'd be surprised. There's actually not that many people who submit questions. So if you're wondering, like, should I submit? I don't know if it's worth it. Like, go ahead. Like, I want people to submit because I'm kind of running out of questions. But I picked some good ones. So let's do it. Let's jump into the first one by Arnav.
Hey Andrew, my name is Arnav Pandey and I'm from India. And my question is that what is the best practice that a beginner can follow? Is it that I do one tutorial and one by my own or something like that? Let me know. I hope you like the question. Thank you.
Excellent question, Arnav. Short answer, I think the one-to-one cadence is pretty good for beginners. But the long answer is, like, eventually you should really only need tutorials when you either need to learn a new skill or it's one of your priorities. It's a skill set that you need to learn eventually. Like, for example, just 3.0 is about to come out, Blender 3.0, and geometry nodes, if you learned all that, get ready to relearn it because they changed it. They changed it from this attribute system to this field system, which is actually more user-friendly. It's easier to understand, and you can read the node setups a lot easier than attributes, but it does require relearning things. So anyways, I needed to learn it because I was trying to scatter something, and I'm like, I can't even figure out where's the so I got to like watch a tutorial. So that's a perfect case. I need to learn a new skill to achieve this skill for this project. But then as well as that, I am learning, for example, like color space and color grading theory, like understanding how that works, because I know that color and like, you know, the difference between a 16-bit TIFF and a 16-bit PNG and all that technical stuff that so few people understand. One of them is Troy Sobotka on Twitter. He'll let you know that he understands it. He's aggressive. He'll tell you when you're wrong. But anyways, that stuff is important because it, you know, if you don't learn it, you're constantly at the whims of just guesswork, and you end up making mistakes that'll, you know, could be improved if you saved it in the right format. And then the grading, like how to actually, you know, make pleasing looking grade, right, for an image. So that's a kind of thing that I it's a non-urgent skill set that I'm slowly learning because it will be important for my work. So that's sort of that's sort of the way you do it when you get older. Like when you get more mature, you're picking up a new skill for a new project. How do I do that thing? Okay, that's how I do it. And then that like follow it to achieve a result, like that abandoned house tutorial that I published recently on Blender Guru. It was, you know, how to achieve a result. Like professional artists might watch that just to pick up a couple of things and stay abreast of techniques or workflows and things like that. Anyways, that was a spiel, but really, I think the one-to-one cadence is pretty good. Like really, all that's important is that you are trying to put into practice what it is that you have learned. Because if you are only watching tutorials and you finish one tutorial and then you move on to the next one and then you move on to the next one, it can kind of feel good because your output is increasing, right? Every time you do the tutorial, you get like a finished, you know, image that you can share and get likes on Facebook, etc., right? And you feel like you're doing something, like I'm actually improving as an artist. But much like in the same way to like if you've ever like read a book or watched a documentary and then you've tried to tell someone about it, like, oh, I read this really good book the other day, it was like about the economics of like blah 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 blah, and then someone's like, huh, tell me about that, like how does the trickle down economics work or something like that, and then you're like, yeah, so it's and then you try and like remember what it is that you read or learned, and you realize you didn't actually learn barely anything. You felt smart because the person that was teaching it knew what they were talking about and they put it in a way that you could understand, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have learned it. You've just sort of come away with the same, like a brain dump of that person almost, like kind of, but you couldn't apply it to a new thing. So often you finish a tutorial and you go like, oh, great. And then if you then start your own project and like the tutorial was about like modeling a lantern, and then, you know, you try to make a sword yourself, you realize that this is a completely different beast because I'm not painting by numbers. I don't have the exact steps to follow. So humans are very good at mimicry. That's a good thing, like mimicking and, you know, copying somebody else, you know, play for play. That's a very good way of learning. We're sort of apparently wired to do that. But it does not necessarily help you put that into your long-term memory bank so that you can apply it to something else. So if you're doing one and then doing another, that is perfect. I'd say for a beginner or intermediate even, like definitely do that. When you do that personal project, by the way, you'll probably like immediately go like, oh damn, I can't even do it. Like you get 5 minutes into it before you realize like, oh, I need to watch another tutorial. Like if you watch the donut tutorial and then you're like, cool, I'm going to make a spaceship. It's like, oh, what do you start with again? Go back and watch this thing and, oh, okay, so you start with an object that's similar, you know. So anyways, as long as you're trying to alternate and apply it to something after you have learned it, you will learn and be so much better off than an artist who just went tutorial to tutorial to tutorial to tutorial. They might have greater output because they'll have all these finished images that they can post and share with their friends, and their friends will go, wow, you're so good, because you don't say in it that you watched this tutorial, you pretend it's your own original artwork. So you'll produce slower stuff because you have to learn and hit these brick walls every single time you do a personal piece. You'll be slower. You won't have that output that they will. But God forbid that person ever tries to create something of their own. They'll realize that, oh my God, those 10 tutorials that I watched, I didn't learn much. Right. So definitely just, you know, as long as you're trying to, you know, alternate, I think you'll be good. All right. Let's go to another question. I'm just going to pull up a random one here. Let's have a look. I've got names on them. Okay.
Hey Andrew, my name is Tebe, all the way from South Africa. Since we are in November, my question is about nodes, how they work. What would you say is the best strategy for beginner intermediate to learn nodes in Blender? Thank you.
Cool. It's good that I think you sent this question last year. It sounds like I'm answering it at the right time. Yes, we're in November, as you said. So what's the best approach to learning nodes? That's why I don't feel put off that I didn't answer your question. It'll sit in a folder until it's ready to come out. Okay. All right. So what's the best way to learn? Look, I mean tutorials for sure, because if you just, here's the thing, tutorials are useful, right? I could just say like, okay, no, you just got to like apply it to a new project, like a personal project. And that is helpful, but I've seen people that spend way too long trying to figure something out for themselves because they don't have the information. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. People have figured it out and they've got answers and you should go to them. So for sure, if you don't know nodes at all, don't try and figure it out one by one. Like when I taught at the prison, I was there for like 4 hours, by the way. It wasn't a full-term thing or whatever. But I went to a prison and they asked me to, because they're learning Blender at prison, believe it or not. And it happened to be the only prison in the world that's doing this. And it happens to be like just an hour from me. So it worked out pretty interestingly. But they were, I mean, I didn't tell them this necessarily, but like they are severely limited by the fact that they don't have the internet, because it's a security thing and blah, blah, blah. But they don't have access to the internet. So if they've got a question or they need tutorials or something like that, they ask the person, the teacher, this lady who runs this agency that operates inside the prison, and she does teaching and education, blah, blah, blah. She puts all the questions to her, gets the tutorials. She will, I think maybe her computer there, or maybe she goes home, but either way, she puts it on a USB stick and then she comes back the next day and like, here's your answers to those questions. But it means that when they're working on something, like imagine if you didn't have the internet and every time you hit a problem in Blender and it's like, oh, why is it rendering black? Like the thing isn't, the material is not previewing. What's happening? If you couldn't Google that, like you forget like how severely important that is. I'm sort of detouring from your question, but the point is that people have the answers and you are just treading water if you're trying to do it all yourself. So you need to have those tutorials, okay? There is a Blender shader course by Simon Toms on the Blender Cloud, which was recently named, what's it called now? They renamed the Blender Cloud to something else. Blender Studio? It's called Blender Studio, which now it's like, that makes me confused of like, is that the animation studio? Because I think that's also called the Blender Studio. Or is that called the Institute? Anyways, but there's a course called Procedural Shading, Fundamentals and Beyond. So if you want to learn nodes, I'd recommend starting there. It does get very advanced. Like you follow the first, like, I think there's a series, module 1 or something. And I'm like, all right, I'm picking this up. I'm learning the basic concepts. It's a pretty good explanation of everything. And then like, I think module 2 just ramps up. I couldn't get past one video. I was like, I have no idea what is going on. So anyways, module 1 at least is very good. But yeah, so I would start, doing tutorials, but then try to apply it to a new thing, okay? Because again, it's not just good enough to just learn the thing. You gotta, you gotta apply it to something new. So, I mean, that's really it. Like, here's the other thing. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to think like, all right, I'm gonna conquer nodes. Like, for what? What are you trying to achieve? Because, for example, I never did a Photoshop course. I never did, but I could probably use most of the core functions of Photoshop now because I've been using it for the last 10 years. Every single time I needed to learn to do something, a mask or a clipping mask or alpha lock or, saving in this format, that format, I Googled that question. And so I've slowly learned the skill. And I kind of think that was a smarter way than thinking, all right, up front, I'm going to learn everything, because you'll learn stuff you don't need to know or that you will forget quickly. So I kind of think like in the nodes case, like you should learn some tutorials, follow some tutorials on making a shader, learning some textures, some shaders, that kind of thing, and then make your own thing. And that way you'll just at least solidify it. But then like just trying to learn everything and like I got to learn the vector math and I got to learn this because that's going to be important. Like there's other things you should be learning as well besides nodes, and chances are those are going to pay off more than just the nodes thing. So yeah, Nodevember is it's a good deep dive, and you'll have a community and you can ask questions and all that kind of thing. But yeah, tutorials, one for one, and just keep making shaders from tutorials and trying to apply it to a personal project. That's my answer to that question. Okie dokie. Let's move on to the next one.
Hi Andrew, my name's Max, and I have a breadth versus depth question. So what do you do when you are working really deep into one bigger idea and you have a lot of smaller ideas that start pulling at your attention? How do you identify which ideas are worth bookmarking for later, which ones are just distractions altogether, and which ones are worth going down into that rabbit hole right then and there? Thank you very much.
Ooh, I've just been hypnotized by your voice. Max, you should consider a career in voice acting, or you have a voice... Well, I'm just going to say you have a face for radio. That's so nice to say. You have a voice for radio. Damn, man. That's, anyways, all right, let's go. Well, your question was a weird one. What was your question?
Smaller ideas that start pulling at your into one bigger idea, and you have a lot of smaller ideas that start pulling at your attention.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so, I mean, this is the thing that they say, what is it? Inspiration is everywhere, but it has to find you working. That's someone said that quote, yeah, inspiration has to find you working. And I do think that is the case. That if you're just like doing nothing and you just like, what was it? There was another quote that was like, you know, I find inspiration, like it just hits me at random times. I'll be out in the field and then there just be, it's inspiration like a lightning bolt and I got to run inside and I got to do something. And then somebody was like, that never ever happens to me. And I relate to that. I relate to the person who said, whoever this artist or whoever was like, inspiration has to find you working. Because yeah, when you're working on a project, you just think of so many ideas, other things that you could be working on, or I could do this, or like, oh my God, like we're learning for this donut NFT project, which we'll announce later, but a little teaser, along with this community NFT big artwork thing with everyone's donuts in it. It's going to be part of the Baker's Dozen. So the Baker's Dozen is going to be 12 donuts by me, and then this other one, this last little piece, this community NFT thing. So I've been making these donuts of all different types, and one of them was a hologram. I want to make this hologram because it would also make a good tutorial, so I'm going to do a tutorial on it. And then when you figure out this process of the hologram with geometry nodes, then you're like, oh, I could do like an LED screen, right? Like this separate thing. Or like with the hologram, it's like, oh, what if we could make it in space and we could have like a planet floating around the thing, or and you just end up, so it's called kind of like project creep or scope creep or something like that, where it's like an idea just sort of builds. So write it down. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing. Like don't detour so far off your original course that you never end up where you never finish, right? Because that's the other thing, is that you can end up with a project that is so big, you end up hating the fact that you took it on, and you've just bitten off way too much because you keep adding to it. But if it's smaller ideas that are like completely separate to it, like, yeah, you don't want to be the person that like just starts a project, cancels it, starts another project, gets another idea, jumps to that, and then never finishes anything. Because following something to completion is important for a learning ability. Go through the full process anyway. So I think just write it down. I mean, yeah, I used to keep like an Evernote of ideas, and I just write down when I had an idea struck me while I was working. So yeah. Anyways, let's go to another question.
Oh yeah, Hello, Andrew Price. I am Dipan Podal. I'm from Nepal, and my question to you is, how do you complete your started projects faster? I started the project of creating a short film 1 week ago and thought that it will be completed within less than 2 weeks, but since I procrastinated again and again, and in order to enhance the quality of my 3D models and the armatures, I rather spent more than 4 weeks and still couldn't complete even the half of the project. So my question is, how do you complete your project faster or not procrastinate during projects and just make projects better in lesser time?
Damn, dude, I relate to that so much. I had almost the exact same experience of that. When I was a young whippersnapper and I was learning Blender, I was living with my parents' house, maybe like a decade ago, and I was like so inspired, and I was like, oh, I feel like I could do anything, and then I'm like, I'm gonna make a short film in 24 hours, and the idea for the short film was it was going to take place in an underground car park, and the door was going to open and all this water was going to flush in there, and it was because it was the fluid sim, I think, just came out, and I'm like, I'm going to do it. I think I stayed up till like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. or something crazy. I might have actually gone right through the night because I really did think I could do it, and then I eventually like hit the thing of like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to finish this. And then I'm like, okay, new goal. Not 24 hours, but 2 weeks. I'm going to finish this project within 2 weeks. And I think I posted the work in progress on Blender Artist or Elysian or whatever the forum was called at the time, as a work in progress. And I said it was going to be coming soon. I never finished it. Got distracted by other things, or it might have just been too ridiculous. I could never get the fluid sim to work properly. And the fluid sim in Blender still kind of sucks, I think. MantaFlow, I haven't really fully delved into it because it's buggy and I haven't fixed it. They came out with MantaFlow, the gas MantaFlow thing, and it's got these 2 crucial bugs in it. They still haven't fixed it, and it's bugging me because I spent 6 weeks in preparation for an explosion tutorial that I was going to make for Blender Guru. And then I eventually realized there was 4 bugs. They've fixed 2 of them. These other 2 still outstanding. The adaptive domain does not expand fast enough, so the smoke gets clipped to the edge. And then there's glitching in the smoke. It kind of like, I think there's like problems with the shadow or something like that. Like pretty big bugs, and they just haven't been fixed yet. So I'm kind of bugged at that. Anyways, sorry. That was a tirade. Okay, so really, I think your question is about expectations of time, because that's what I have learned. I think you were asking about like procrastination, right? Like, how do you stop procrastinating or work faster? I can't speak on procrastination, but probably you're procrastinating, maybe because you weren't working as fast as you thought you were and things were taking longer than it was, and you were kind of like losing motivation. So that could definitely be part of it. But working faster, I don't think that's the thing either. As for like better workflows and better techniques so that you can produce things faster, you'll get that with more time. But like, your problem is just you set an unrealistic expectation for achieving something, much like I did. I thought I was going to do it 24 hours, then 2 weeks, and then maybe I think I said a month. Never did finish the thing. But what was I going to say? So predicting and setting this realistic deadline, it is something that if you speak to any producer or production manager, product manager, anyone like that, if you ask them like, how do you set a realistic time frame for a project, they'll go like, all right, I can recommend some good books to you, right? There's different frameworks, there's different workflows, blah 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 blah. It is a whole thing. It is basically people's job is to figure this out, and they get it wrong. And engineers, talking about web development, they get it right. They've been doing it for 10 years and they still can like set unrealistic, like their expectations can shoot out 3 to 10x what they said. And I'm like, dude, you've been doing this 10 years. You said it was going to take 2 weeks to do, and we're up to 3 months now. Like, what's going on? It's like, well, there was all these extra challenges. We didn't expect this. We also didn't look at it. And then it's not okay. It is kind of their fault, because this is the thing with setting expectations. Sorry, predict. What do you call it? Setting a realistic deadline. Setting that realistic deadline. Part of that is addressing what you do not know, your unknowns, right? Like, let's, old school. Let's say one of the pioneers, the people who were conquering the earth at the time, that were jumping from country to country on their ships, and they go, we're going to land in Australia, right? And the British land in Australia, and then we're going to chart a course from across here to the other side of Australia, right? We predict it will take 2 months, let's just say, right? They don't know what's out there, okay? They have no idea, okay? It could be day one, they hit a river they can't cross, okay? They have to go around the river. That adds a month to their thing. Then half of them die of heat stroke. Half of them die of getting bitten by snakes and spiders that they had no idea were there. They get lost on the way. Like, all of these things could just... By the way, I don't think this happened to that degree. I'm sure it probably did a lot. But that is just an example, right? You're looking at a map and you're going, like, okay, from here to here, I think we can do that and whatever, right? But you don't know the unknowns because you haven't started the thing yet, right? So when an engineer starts building this feature for a website or something like that, they don't know all of the variables. They don't, because they haven't delved in to the structure of the assets or the database or, hosting issues, the plan differences, that kind of thing. So they haven't done that. And that is okay, because you can't spend so long scoping something, because then you end up just doing the thing. You will only know the full time it will take when you've actually finished it. But you have to be aware of what you don't know. And when I was starting that short film project, much like I'm sure you were, there were a lot of things I did not know, but I just wasn't aware of it. So one of the best techniques I have found for figuring this out, for calling attention to the things you do not know, is to break this, instead of thinking of it as a project of a short film, break that down into the individual steps, the tasks that are required to complete it, okay? So instead of going, it is a short film that I'm going to finish in 2 weeks, how long are you going to spend creating the story? Okay, how long are you going to spend making the concept art? How long are you going to spend the modeling, the texturing, the rigging, the animation, the layout, the lighting, the compositing, the rendering, all of those things, okay? Now, you probably haven't thought through it that far, to be honest, because most people, it's exciting, you get ooh, and then it's all right, now think about each one of those things. It's just knocks all the wind out of yourselves. You're like, oh, I don't know. How long is the story going to take? I don't know. Okay, so you've got question marks on a lot of those blocks, and that is normal. That's fine, okay? And as you mature, as you do more, as you become more experienced as an artist, a lot of those boxes you will have a better guess, okay? But what you need to do is give a sort of a margin, a buffer on how confident you are with your guess, okay? So, sorry, the opposite. How the more confident you are on something, if all you know is story writing because you learned that in school and you've written several scripts and blah, 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 you might go, okay, I know with pretty good confidence that I could finish this story within 2 days, but I'm going to give it a 50% buffer. I'm going to leave it up to 3 days, okay? Concept art, I have no idea. I've never done concept art. So that is a big question mark. I might start, it might take 4 days, it might take 6 weeks, right? If I don't like it or I have to learn a new skill, a tutorial. I don't know rigging, for example. I don't know animation. I would have to put big question marks on those. I would have to learn that skill. And every time you have to learn a new thing, you got to just at the biggest buffer, right? No idea how long that is going to take to rig a character. I'm sure I could do it badly in a couple of days, right, as a guess. But if I wanted to do it proper to the point that it would stand up in an animation and wouldn't look terrible and cause all these issues down the road, I don't know, 2 weeks, 2 months? It's a big question mark. But animation, same thing, got no idea. So I'm going to put, okay, but I can make a guess, right? And when I'm breaking it down, at least it's helping me think about all of the things and work through it. And put that buffer depending on how little I know and how the lack of confidence I have for it. So rigging, okay, a character, I'm going to say 2 weeks, okay? But big question mark. So it could go up to 4 weeks just for rigging. Animation. Depends how long the story is, depends what the character is, depends what they're doing. But let's say it's a minute short. He has to do dialogue and running. 4 weeks? Could be 6, could be 20. I could be totally off. I don't know anything about it, so I got to learn the basics. I got to go way back, and it's going to look terrible, but so these breaking all this stuff down you'll quickly realize, by the way, that your deadline was way off. You'll be like, oh, okay, there's a lot more to this than I sort of initially did. So that's why it's a really good exercise. It's breaking it down. So yeah, that would be my advice to you. And by the way, that's a really common question. I was going through the questions this morning, and there's a lot of people that were asking some variant of setting realistic deadlines. So hope that was helpful to all of those people who asked that question. Before we jump to the next episode, a little advert for myself, me handing myself some money. This episode is brought to you by my company, Polygon. Professional artists are aware that trying to do everything by themselves is a fantastic waste of their time, because they already know how to do it. They know how to model a chair. So making their own chair for this one little scene is a complete waste of time. You need to pull and utilize the resources that are available to you so that you can finish work that the client is happy with. So most professional artists are subscribed to an asset library. Many subscribe to multiple. I myself have subscribed to 2 or 3. And Polygon is one of those. So Polygon is a library of textures, models, and HDRs held to the utmost highest quality standards. We inspect all our models and textures, and we've figured out workflows and processes to maintain consistency, so that all the textures have the same lighting level and all that kind of thing. You can use them together in a scene. There's a level of details for the models. There's all these processes so that it is watertight. It is ready, not watertight. The model, that's a separate thing. It is ready to use in your scene, and you don't have to worry about it, right? Because you can let down. I've seen scenes be let down by poor assets all the time. So you got to have good stuff. So Polygon is focused on the architecture industry. So we go out there and find the stuff that ArchViz artists say that they need. So things like terrazzo, terracotta tile, Zalige tile. Zalige and terrazzo, they were on the site semi-recently. And in the coming 2 months, we've got a whole bunch of releases down the line, because we've just figured out how to finally scale up our asset production. So in the next 2 months, we've got a bunch of new stuff coming. Firewood, flowers, plants, the terracotta tiles I mentioned. We got cinder block. Is that what you call it? Cinder block? I think that's what we call it here. Oh, we call it Besser block in Australia. Anyways, you get the idea. So we go out there, we research the top trends, we speak to interior designers, ArchViz artists, and then find out what it is that they need, that clients are asking for. So their next project, they've actually got it ready. So if that is you, if you're interested in architecture so that you can design spaces faster, Polygon is where to go. POLIIGON.com. You can join 1 million artists. You can sign up for free, and you can start using Polygon today in your work and designing better spaces faster. Hope to see you on the website. And with that out of the way, let's move on to our next question.
Hey, this is Max in Nampa, Idaho. I'd like to ask, is there like a specific computer that you recommend for rendering in cycles for animations? Like, because the current computer I have is an iMac, and it's taking about sometimes a day and a half to render an animation with like 100 frames in cycles. And I'm wondering, is that normal?
Something funny about the way he finished that. It was like a punchline. It was like one of those videos where a guy's telling a story and then there's like a punchline right at the end. Is that normal? I almost feel like I was getting, what is it, like Rickrolled or like Tree Fitty or something. Anyways, so that's a really common question. What hardware? Don't let anyone tell you that hardware doesn't matter, by the way. It does. You will achieve more with a faster computer. However, it is not the reason that you are not a good artist. So there's a two things. Like some people are like, yeah, that's the reason my art isn't very good. I just need to spend $3,000 on this thing, get this new card, then my art will be great. It's like, no, but it'll help you get there faster. You'll learn lessons faster, because when you've got a faster card, let's say for an example, you can iterate creatively. You can get that result in like 5 seconds rather than 2 minutes, and therefore you can get that feedback, you can improve the scene, and you can then do 800 refinements a day versus 50. So you will improve a scene faster and you'll get better faster, but it is not the reason you're not good. I've seen amazing artwork done on really slow machines, and in fact here's the other thing, right? All of the professionals and people that you look up to today, just think about what they were using when they started 15 years ago, right? My first computer was a Pentium 2, I think, or something like that. And like the earliest version of Blender, it had like nothing, right? And so we had to make do with what we had. So it's not the reason you're not able to achieve it. But again, if you've got money, if you want to invest in your future and you're really committed to this 3D art stuff, it is a good investment to upgrade your computer. Now, thankfully, there is an answer here, because you said, what do you do? Some people go on forums, they're like, oh, what computer should I get? What about this? What about this? And they ask their friends, and it's like, the answer is right there. It's opendata.blender.org. Go there, opendata.blender.org. This is an open benchmark that the Blender Institute or Foundation put together. It is basically a benchmark file. It's like an executable. It's 12 megabytes. You download it, and it will render some of the production scenes, I think, that they did for the movies. It'll render a bunch of scenes, and then it will give you the final the speed, how long it took for each of those things. So that'll tell you where you actually fit, because you said, like, it takes like a day to render such and such a thing. It's like, I have no idea if that's good or bad, right? Like I sometimes spend 2 hours per frame on a render. Is that good or bad? Well, it really depends. It depends on what's in it. This one was a forest with a cabin on dual Titan RTXs, so it was a lot of processing power that needed it. If you're rendering a little blob, a little cube bouncing across the screen, and it's taking a day, yeah, that's a problem. Okay, so if you go on opendata.blender.org, you can do that benchmark test, and most importantly, you can see the graph of other hardware that'll show you the fastest CPUs available today and the fastest GPUs available today. So I'm looking at the site right now. If you're curious, fastest CPU as of recording this, 4th of November 21, it is the dual AMD EPYC 64-core processor. Doesn't surprise me. How much is that? 7H12 AMD. What is that? I've never heard of it. The EPYC. Wow, $8,000 on Australian. So I don't know, 6,000 US. And then you got the Threadripper 3990X 64 core, 3970X 32 core after that. But damn, that EPYC one is like almost as fast as the fastest card. So the fastest GPUs, you can probably predict it. You almost don't even need to know. It's the 3090, the RTX 3090. That is the fastest. Then the 3080 Ti, then the 3080, then the 3070 Ti, then the 3070, and then the laptop versions of those. For some reason, they list them twice. They got like the RTX 3090 and then the 3090 RTX. Yeah, they got to clean up this graph. But anyways, it's cool. You get to see, how your computer is performing in relation to what is available today. I learned that you can actually get a 3090 now. 3090 RTX. Like, they're available. I can buy one at the shop nearby. How about that? So the shortage is slowly fading away, which is nice. So you can start buying hardware again. Hooray! And it'll only be like, I don't know. That's the other thing. It's like, because of the pandemic and like we couldn't buy the hardware because of the shortage of chipsets or whatever. It's like, I know for sure that they're working on the next card, and like I haven't been able to use the card for the last year. So like, should I buy the 3090 now or should I wait for the next card? Because that's going to come out soon. Is it? Anyways, so just go there. A lot of people don't know about the site, but it's great. So I would go there. Okay, dokie. Let's go to the next question.
What's up, Andrew Price? Huge fan of yours, despite never seeing the donut tutorial. I recently graduated art school, applied to maybe 100 places so far, and the 5% of them that have gotten back to me have been rejection letters. So I was just kind of wondering what advice you would offer artists sort of just starting out their professional careers. Thank you so much. Enjoy the podcast and keep up the good work.
Did I already answer that question? I feel like I've already answered that question on a previous podcast. Either way, chances are most of you listening to this haven't listened to every podcast episode. So, you know what? I'll just answer it again. You said you applied to, was it 20 studios or something like that, and you got only 5% replied, and they were all rejection letters. Look, man, that's normal. It's don't feel down on yourself. I remember doing that. I had the phone book, and back in the day, because I'm old, I had a phone book, and I would go to the studio, and I would call them up, and I'd say, hello, I'm just, I was curious if there was any jobs available, and they're like, all right, we'll send through something, and then I'm like, all right, send it, and then they're like, okay, but thank you, not right now. They were at least nice. In your case, okay, so you sent it out 5%, you got rejection letters. It just means you're not at the employable level yet. You haven't hit the mark yet. You're not at the what's it called? The threshold, the benchmark. You haven't hit the benchmark so that you are employable yet. But that is fine, dude. Don't feel down on yourself. Okay, do feel motivated to improve. Okay, don't congratulate yourself for nothing. But just know that every artist does that. Okay, you have to improve, and you won't know until you get feedback. And most people find it very hard to get feedback. So it's just you it is expected that would happen. Okay, so I would say if you can afford it, pay to find a mentor. Okay, so there are some sites, I think I mentioned it before, Mentor Coalition by Josh Lynch. You can go on there, and I think it's like $600 or $400 a month or something like that, which is, by the way, dirt cheap compared to what a school will be charging you, for probably less, to be brutally honest. Because you're just paying for the teacher's time when you're not using it, and you could just be learning from a tutorial, when really what you need is just small targeted feedback at the right time to help you figure out what your weaknesses are, so that you can then go and do that. You can spend a few months yourself doing tutorials, trying to improve it. Okay, they told me composition is my weakest part. All right, I'm just going to focus on that. Do that. And then you can pay to see another mentor or something. Okay, you can go the free route, by the way, if you can't afford that. I understand. It's just going to take you longer, and the feedback will be hit and miss, because you won't know if they are telling the truth, or if you should listen to it, or if it's just a random person. That's the other thing. A lot of people that are giving the feedback, they have worse experience than the person who's asked for the feedback. I get it actually a lot on Twitter. I ask for when I ask for feedback on something, I'm like, I don't know, can anyone help me with this? And I get some people that are like, okay, I've only been using Blender for a day, but I think your weakest part is, it's like, all right, bold, man, it's brave. I appreciate you replying. I don't know if I could treat your feedback with much weight, but I did ask for it, so hey, I'm not, anyways. So that's what I would do. Okay, so go to forums when you can, and if you can afford it, pay for a mentor and do it, because they'll help you. When you go into a forum, by the way, just ask for honest feedback. Those two words, honest feedback, and say, you're not going to hurt my feelings, okay? Because I invite it. I invite criticism, because that is really important. Because a lot of people don't realize this on an art forum. Most people are not there for feedback, okay? So if you go in uninvited and give somebody feedback, they can meet you with hostility, okay? They'll start defending themselves and say, I did it because of this, and that's my style, and this and that, and fair enough. They didn't ask for the feedback, and here you are giving it. I would say, don't you want to improve? You should welcome all the feedback. But fair enough, they didn't invite it. So by clearly saying, you could even put it in the title, feedback wanted, so that people really know that they should come in there and just rip it to shreds, right? Because that'll help you improve. You could even say, I applied recently for several jobs and got 0 response or 0 acceptance. So please help me improve my work, my portfolio, whatever it is. Help me improve this piece. What are my weaknesses? What am I not seeing? And that should hopefully help you improve. But you know what, guys? I think we're going to make this a semi-short one at 45 minutes or something like that. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and hit subscribe on this new channel, the Andrew Price Podcast. And you can find me on all the usual places. Subscribe to the main channel, Blender Guru, of course. And look out for that NFT donut project that I think is going to come out in January, because I don't think I can get it. Because the Blender 3.0 is coming out and I got to do that donut beginner tutorial series again. I don't think I got time to also release it and do all the other stuff. So I think January, but look out for that. That's going to be an exciting one, and there's going to be a bunch of tutorials. I think you'll like it on Blender Guru around that time. So thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you in a future podcast episode. Bye.